The Seattle Seahawks are hot! Fresh off an overtime victory against the New England Patriots, at 2-0 they find themselves in first place in the NFC West with a game against the Miami Dolphins on deck. Joining us to discuss just how legit this team is Seattle sports radio legend and host of the Mitch Unfiltered podcast, Mitch Levy. Let's light him up.
I'm Jackson Bevins, and this is Cigar Thoughts.
Welcome back to the Cigar Lounge. I am Jackson Bevins, and along with my prestigious producer, Mike Barwin, this is the Cigar Thoughts podcast. Mike, how are we doing today?
Feeling prestigious, Jackson, because I really cannot imagine, and I'm hoping that you feel the same way, looking at the standings of the division for the team that I root for and not seeing them in first place. That really sounds kind of pathetic, honestly. So I'm glad I can't relate to that experience. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. Look, we came into this wanting the Seahawks to be 2-0, given who they were facing in these first couple of games. But at the end of the day, you still got to go out and win. And it was a little bit closer than I think we would want, but wins are wins. And when they hand out playoff spots at the end of the season, that's all they count. Seahawks are 2-0, the only ones in the division, one of only 9 teams in the NFL that have that record. I got to say, I'm feeling good. I mean, there's reasons for concern, but there's a lot of reasons to be excited too.
As I've always said, it's about the destination, not the journey. So I'm glad that we're at this place and we can kind of block out a lot of the steps that we're taking to get here. I mean, look, my takeaway from Sunday, in tandem with how the Seahawks fared against the Pats and how the Bengals fared against the Chiefs, is that maybe the Patriots are just a little bit better than we expected they would be.
It happens every year, man. We all thought the Texans were going to be one of the 5 worst teams in the NFL last year.
Yeah, and then CJ Stroud. So very, very comparable to Jacoby Brissett, of course. Very similar skill sets. No. I mean, look, the defense, they gave up a couple of big plays that extended drives. They got their ass kicked on that one drive in the second half, which, give them some leeway. You had a rookie linebacker in his first real playing time, but they got it done when they needed to. They had no running game. Gino was playing out of his fucking gourd, and a win is a win, and I'll take it, on the road in the coach's second career game.
Well, and that I think can't be overlooked. Like, look, this is all brand new for a lot of these guys. It's brand new for the coaches, like all of the coaches. It's brand new for a lot of the players, and you need to see it work. And so far, it's worked well enough. Have they been a perfect team? Not even close. But they've been good enough. And every Sunday, that's all you need is good enough. And look, historically, the stats bear this out. A 2-0 start just puts you in a very advantageous position for making the playoffs. And I think everyone that follows the Seahawks would consider making the playoffs a success in Mike McDonald's first year. So yeah, I'm feeling really good about it. And the reason I'm so excited about the guest today is we've got someone who has seen it all with this team. You mentioned Gino's playing out of his mind, and the defense has been as good as we could have hoped, I think, realistically, but there's flaws to this team. And I'm stoked to have Mitch on because he's going to tell us what those are without poo-pooing what they're good at. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But before we do, I want to remind everyone listening that Cigar Thoughts is proud to be sponsored by Seattle Cigar Concierge and Glenfiddich Single Malt Scotch Whiskey, 2 companies whose products I enjoy on a regular basis, 2 companies whose products I am enjoying today. And those of you who have been with us all off season already know this. But we have teamed back up with Seattle Cigar Concierge for an exciting second release of the Cigar Thoughts cigars. We now have the Cigar Thoughts Red Zone series, which combines a robust taste profile with a smooth Connecticut wrapper and will be available to purchase using the link on the show page for the same discounted price of $149 for a bundle of 10 stogies that you're used to with the Cigar Thoughts Originals. The goal has always been to provide an avenue to high-end cigars without the high-end cost, and this partnership provides exactly that. Feedback on these stogies has been excellent so far. We'd love yours as well. They also make a great gift, so get some for yourself or for someone else by following the link at cigarthoughtsnfl.com. Mike and I love doing this show, and there are 2 ways y'all listening and watching can help support it so we can keep the episodes coming. One is by purchasing the cigars, which again come at an astonishing price for the quality. The other is by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Cigar Thoughts, where you can watch full episodes as well as the funny and insightful clips that Mike puts together. Give a thumbs up to the stuff you like and let us know what you think in the comments. And of course, you can listen to us everywhere you get your podcasts. And look, man, the vibes are sensational right now. 2 weeks do not a season make, but they're all we've got to go on in 2024. That's why we reached out to someone who has seen it all and does a sensational job of calling things as he sees them. He spent over 20 years hosting Seattle Sports Talk Radio and is currently the host of the popular Mitch Unfiltered podcast. He is Mitch Levy. Mitch, thanks for coming on.
Are you sure the vibes are good? And if the vibes were not good, would you say the vibes are not good?
That's one thing we're very honest about on this show.
Really? I'm not sure.
How's your vibe integrity?
Let me tell you about my vibe integrity radar on Jackson Bevins and Cigar Thoughts. Now, we've only had him a couple of times, and I'm just hoping this thing goes a little bit longer, that he doesn't get, annoyed with us so much that he quits. But my radar says that his vibes are always good. That the Seahawks could be 2-13, and he'd have a reason to say the vibes are good right now. The vibes are good. We're going to have a top-notch draft choice next year or something. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, listen.
Ever since they drafted a guy named Jackson, he's just been out of control.
Right, yeah. He was their first pick on Team Jackson, They can do no wrong now. No, man, honestly, when we started this show, it was shortly after Russell Wilson's finger injury, right before the 2021 season went off the tracks. Yeah. And vibes were terrible, and we weren't afraid to say so. And vibes were bad at the end of last season. We weren't afraid to say so. But look, man, we got 2 games into a new era. I am going to always approach a big transitional phase with optimism until given reason otherwise. And so far, they haven't. They are a flawed team, but they are a 2-0 flawed team. So yeah, if the vibe switch happens, we'll be at the forefront of calling it as such. But so far, man, I'm pretty pleased.
Now, hold on a second. When you say the vibes are good, then you're talking about your own vibes. This is not an editorial on what you sense the fans of the Pacific Northwest or the 12s think of this team. This is a Jackson Bevins vibe.
That's right.
Okay. I want to make sure, man, because I don't get the same feeling about the overall vibes of the Seahawks nation. I don't know about Mike.
Oh no, man.
Yeah.
I mean, look, until there's the equivalent of Patrick Mahomes on this team and they've won 4 straight Super Bowls and everyone's on a rookie contract, there's going to be people who are unsatisfied with the situation. But I'm big on zooming out and trying to view things within the context of the entire league and truly what this team's time frame is for being a contender. If they win more games than they lose this season, to me, that puts them ahead of schedule. So 2-0 is a great start. But, you mentioned the chance that we've had a couple of opportunities to chat together on your show this week. And man, I just want to tell you now with people listening how much I appreciate the opportunity that you and Brady Henderson from ESPN reached out to let me be a part of the Seahawks No Table that you guys do every week. Man, it's been really fun.
It's nice to have you. And I'll just say to you both, I'll just say that Brady and I take bets every time you're going to be on, the over-under on how long it's going to take for you to say that you zoom out, that you like to zoom out. And I had, for this particular podcast, I had over the 5.5 minutes, and I think I lost. I think you went under.
Yeah.
Bad bet.
I think you went under.
It's a bad bet.
It's a terrible bet. Yeah. The zoom out. Man. The Jackson Bevins Cigar Thoughts zoom out. You prefer to zoom out, don't you? You know what he told? You know what he told our audience this last show that came out? I guess it was yesterday. He told our audience. He gave us the whole. Hey, now look. He said that Boye Mafe had Gibson dead to rights in the backfield in that second half run for a loss of 5 or 7 yards. He got away, and what did he go for? About 20 or 30 yards.
45 on that carry.
45 yards, okay. And Bevan says to our audience, now he can get away with this to our audience. He can't get away with it on his own audience. But he says to our audience, listen, Mitch, if you take that run out, they only allowed 3.9 yards a carry, which you can live with. And that's been staying with me the last 2 days, because how many teams would like to be able to take out the longest run?
100%.
And by the way, Bevins, just so you know, now that you've been on our show twice, I can go head to head with you a little bit.
Hell yeah.
I would suggest to you that if you took out the longest run against every defense in the NFL every game, you would get down below 3.9 as a good number for your defense against the run. So I'm going to say to you, I am going to say to you, which I should have said to you on our show on Monday, but I didn't have the heart because it was only your second time. I'm going to say that was bullshit, and that their run defense, I don't know how Mike feels about this, the run defense against the Patriots, when you consider the lack of explosiveness of that offense, for the second consecutive week, the Seahawks played an offense that was anemic. They haven't played a top 50 wide receiver unless Cortland Sutton is a top 50 wide receiver. They haven't even played a top 25 starting quarterback yet. To give up 3.9, or in this case, 5 yards, 5 yards.
It was 5, for sure.
Against a team that had no chance at really moving the ball down, no chance at down the field explosiveness, to still give up 5 yards a carry. I thought their run defense was disappointing, and I got news for you. Mike McDonald will tell you it was disappointing, and it was on him, and he's got to do a better job. That's what he said the last couple.
Yeah, and I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because I believe what I said is they were one missed tackle away from it being 3.9. Yeah.
And I'm a big nose away from looking like Brad Pitt or George Clooney.
Hey, fair enough, man. But and you know what? I am glad that you're pushing back on that, because I'm someone that has always said, look, if you take away everyone's best play, no one is good, right? And there's people, DK Metcalf, he had an easy 56-yard touchdown. What did he do beyond that? I totally get that. That blade cuts both ways. I'm glad that you brought it up. I think for me, what was encouraging about that, like, no one wants to give up that 185 rushing yards, but in the context of the game, they gave up 310 total yards to a bad offense. Yeah, there was way more rushing yards than anybody on this team or that's cheering for this team wants to see. They also held the Patriots to 125 passing yards, which is like a bottom 1 or 2% outcome in terms of passing production, even in today, the last couple of years where passing production has been muted. So yeah, a little bit give and take. 20 points through 2 games to 2 bad offenses. We'll take it. If you offered it to me before the season started, I would have taken it. I wouldn't be doing backflips, and I'm not doing backflips now. But the defense has done enough to give the offense chances to win in the second half, and they've done that both times.
I don't dispute any of that. All I would say to you is I was disappointed in the way the Seahawks defense handled the run on Sunday, considering all of the circumstances. I mean, if you went back and you said, okay, how many runs netted the Patriots 4 or more yards? I don't even know that number. We can do that. It's pretty easy. My guess is that that percentage was pretty high on Sunday. They were getting 4, 5, 6 yards a carry. Now, there were some good moments. On 3rd and very short in overtime. The biggest third down play of the game, 3rd and 1. I can't remember who it was. Was it Terrell Dotson? Broke through the line, made a great play. The Patriots were guilty of an illegal formation anyway, but you were able to make the stop, get off the field. There were good moments. I just would say I expect more from Mike McDonald when his team faces a one-dimensional offense. Okay, when the Baltimore Ravens faced a one-dimensional offense over the years that Mike McDonald was a defensive coordinator, I would expect that one dimension would be curtailed. Better.
That was certainly, it's a fair point, and that was certainly true in year 2 of his time as defensive coordinator. Year one, it was not a dominant defense. He took over a defense that was 25th in points allowed and got them to number 1, but it did take 2 years. If this was game 11, game 15, and they're playing the Patriots and giving up 185 yards rushing, yeah, man, I would be very disappointed. And I am disappointed in 185 yards, focusing just on that.
I don't want to harp.
But no, I'm glad because, I led with how good the vibes are. And this is a 2-0 team. And all of a sudden, so much of the commentary surrounding this team locally and nationally has switched. And we all know how quickly that can change. I mean, this team was 5-2 going into their game with the Ravens last year.
But has it switched? What are you hearing? Are you hearing people jump on their bandwagon at 2-0 after close wins over Bo Nix and Jacoby Brissett? I'm not sensing, again, this is the vibe thing again. Is this a Bevins thing, or do you really sense that the nation is saying, oh, the Seahawks are better than we expected based on these 2 wins against these 2 opponents? I'm not sensing that. I still feel a wait and see type of attitude by the nation on the Seahawks.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, no one's crowning them. I think, and look, what we get is, in terms of feedback, is filtered. None of us are getting all of the feedback. And, look, man, I'm not like anyone else. My algorithm is filtered, on social media and things like that. But I also write an article for the internet every week. And that usually gives me a pretty good, sense of what fans of the Seahawks are feeling. And there have been times where I have been optimistic and there's a lot of comments that are like, no, you're way out over your skis on this one. And there have been times where I've been pessimistic and folks are saying the otherwise. I don't think anyone's crowning the Seahawks. For me, I'm speaking about this team in the context of going from an atrocious defense, right? Like 31st in the NFL in DVOA last year on the defensive side, 32nd over the last half of the season by a significant margin. They're number 5 right now. And DVOA takes strength of opponent into account. I will admit that a lot of the feedback that I get is, I follow a lot of analytically minded accounts, and those accounts are pretty optimistic about how the Seahawks team is playing so far. So that said, there are a lot of warts on this team, and we're going to talk about them. And look, we started with this defense, and they were bad against the run, against the Patriots. They were good against the run against the Broncos. Again, not an explosive team by any stretch. That being said, we do have individual players who are grading out very well. As a whole, like I said, number 5 in DVOA, that is an opponent adjusted stat. You also have multiple players that PFF, take that for whatever it's worth, are graded out in the top 5 at their position in the NFL, including Reek Woolen, Devin Witherspoon, Boye Mafe, Julian Love, and Leonard Williams. That was unheard of a year ago with this team. So I am seeing progress. Like I said, if they played the Patriots 2 months from now and that's how they looked, I'd be a little bit more worried. But like you and I talked about early on, the first time that I was on, it's really nice that this team gets a soft landing spot with those first 2 opponents. And then I thought Miami was going to be the first real test. And I think Mike McDaniel will still find a way to get the ball into the hands of players who are infinitely more explosive than anyone Seattle has faced so far this season. But they're going to get Skylar Thompson. So they've got a chance to keep building some momentum here.
Yeah. Look, I don't want to come across as the guy who's negative about the Seahawks. I'm just pushing back a little bit on you.
And I'm glad you are.
And the truth of the matter is, I'm encouraged about what I've seen defensively from the Seahawks over the first 2 games. I just think, hey, it's 2 games. It's 2 games against, as I said, if you rank the 32, and I'm not a metrics guy, I'm not a numbers guy, I'm not a sabermetrics guy, but if you ranked the 32 starting quarterbacks in the league right now, 1 to 32, I think they have faced probably 2 of the bottom 5 quarterbacks, and they have faced no wide receivers that are a threat to them downfield, especially against their corners. So I say
100% honest.
I say let's be encouraged, but let's wait and see.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna push this back towards you here.
Okay.
So, what would it have taken for you to feel as optimistic as I feel about this team. Did they need to hold both these teams to single digits? Did they need to blow them out?
Are we talking about the team or are we talking about the defense now?
Let's talk about the defense.
The defense, just the defense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm optimistic. I have seen something. I went into the year, if we're just talking about the defense, I went into the year concerned about 2 units on that defense. The inside linebacker position, especially when it came to depth. If one of those 2 guys couldn't play, I'm talking about Dotson and Baker, what sits behind them at the inside linebacker spot. And I was a little concerned with safety. I wasn't sure what to think of Rayshon Jenkins. I know Julian Love had some really good moments at the end of the year last year. I wasn't completely sure what to think about their safeties. So if you then turned that around on me and said, Mitch, now how do you feel about those 2 position groups? I would say, watching them closely over the first 2 games, that I'm feeling much better about both of those position groups than I did to start the year. Mm-hmm. So we'll start there. Those are my concerns. I'm not as concerned as I was, although I still say Jerome Baker gets hurt all the time. He's a perennial injury list guy. And what are they going to do if Baker and or Dotson can't play in a given game, or both of them can't play in a given game? But I think Rayshon Jenkins has shown me a lot, especially in the run game, in the run defensive game, coming up and making plays. So, yeah, I'm optimistic about where this defense is headed vis-a-vis Jackson, where it was a year ago. No question.
Yeah, and
I like Moffi's,
and I think that's fair.
Coming off the edge. I like the rotation of defensive tackles. I think Leonard Williams has been a stud the first 2 games. I think when Nwosu comes back and they have that extra body and Hall doesn't have to play as much and he can just play in spot situations and they can get Mafe out of the game a little bit more, I think they even get better on the edge. So yes, from a defensive perspective, I'm encouraged. I would have thought they would have had a more dominant defensive game this past week against New England, but they won it. They played okay. They played well enough, as you point out. Let's see where the defense goes from here. Interesting that the Dolphins bring an interesting kind of combination of all this because, yeah, they don't have the starting quarterback and Skylar Thompson's here, and that's a big difference. I mean, that's a world of difference. But they do bring two really outstanding wide receivers, obviously. Maybe the best combo of wide receivers in the NFL. So
that's right.
Even with Skylar Thompson as the quarterback, now the Seahawks are going to have to respect those receivers. Don't you think? Their secondary is going to have to respect those receivers, which then that brings Achane into the mix. If they can't bring the extra man into the box, they can go to Achane and he can really hurt you. Look at his averages last year as a rookie. Look at how the start that he's off to this year. He can really hurt you. So I think there's a different set of challenges that are waiting for the Seahawks on Sunday. But certainly the fact that Tua's out and Skylar Thompson in is, a big difference maker. There's no question about that.
Yeah, and I think momentum is important in all sports, and there's a lot of folks in the analytical community who poo-poo it because you can't track it. There's not a stat for momentum. But when you're in that locker room, and especially when you're learning a new system and you've got a new voice at the top for the first time for a lot of these guys in their professional career, you need that proof of concept that everything that they've been drilling into your head all summer long actually works. And I got to think the guys in that locker room are encouraged. You've got Boye Mafe leads the NFL in pressures. You have Leonard Williams, who leads all defensive tackles in the NFL in quarterback hits. They are winning up front, which they haven't done really. And I'm glad you brought up Jerome Baker. Dotson's looked fantastic. Who knows? Look, a good offensive coordinator. And I think Sean Payton's overrated, so I'm not lumping him in there. Definitely not putting New England there from a scheme standpoint. But they're going to face some good ones over the next 2 weeks. They got Mike McDaniels, and then they get Ben Johnson from Detroit. And they are really going to test those off-ball linebackers in a way that they haven't been yet. And if there has been one soft spot in my mind on this defense that stands out among everything else, it's what the Patriots were really good at exploiting, which is that soft spot kind of in between and in front of these linebackers in pass coverage. It's why Hunter Henry had 109 of their 137 receiving yards. Good offensive schemers will hammer that weakness over and over and over again. That's why we've seen Shanahan and McVay feast on Pete Carroll's defenses for the last 6 years. They're using like a third of their playbook, but they're not afraid to just spam the same routes or to target the weak link. And, I'm glad you mentioned Jerome Baker, because the last episode that Mike and I did before the season started was a mailbag. And one of the questions that we got was, who is going to be a really important player this season that we're not talking about? And my answer was Tyrese Knight, who ended up having to play a lot in this last game in place of Jerome Baker. And Tyrese Knight, he was a compiler in college. He led all college football in solo tackles. He's very good at getting to the ball, but he was in college a freelancer, and you're not going to be able to do that against good offenses. So yeah, Miami will be, even with Skylar Thompson, it will be a test because they are a horizontally based offense. They run motion more than any other team in the NFL. They do. It's considered brilliant, but once you hear it, you're like, why haven't teams been doing this for 50 years? Yeah. They give all their playmakers running starts at the snap. Like they're all sprinting at the snap already. And so that is really going to test the system. Like I said, even with Skylar Williams there, I want to switch over and talk about the offense a little bit, because again, DVOA, which is attempting to, it's not a perfect stat, but it is attempting to be the father of all stats in football, much in the way that WAR has become in baseball. Their offense is number 6 right now, despite having an offensive line that ranks 31st in pass block win rate, 31st in run block win rate. Geno Smith has had the shortest time to throw of any quarterback in the entire NFL so far through 2 games. And yet he's 4th in QBR. He's way up there in the yards per attempt and the completion percentage. He was 5 drops away from putting up truly a career game last week against a defense that erased Joe Burrow the week before. So how encouraged are you with what you've seen from the skill players on Seattle's offense versus how concerned you are with how they're playing up front?
Well, that's a heavy question. Multifaceted, lot of layers to the answer to that question. If you ask me about their skilled guys,
let's start there.
I'm not concerned. When Kenneth Walker is available to the team, I'm not concerned in the least. In fact, I think they've got a very, very competitive set of skill position players. You and I think, know enough about each other already after 2 shows on Mitch Unfiltered to agree on the whole Geno Smith thing. I think Geno Smith is vastly underrated by the Seahawks fans. I think he is more than adequate. I think he won the game for them on Sunday, in my estimation. He can take them a long way if he's given the support that he needs. So I think, Geno Smith, the 3 wide receivers, we're good with them. Kenneth Walker, those are your skill position guys. Like to see them get something more out of the tight end position. I don't know if that's going to happen when Pharaoh Brown happens. I really got to tell you that when they acquired Noah Fant back when they traded Russell Wilson, I thought he would give them more. He's kind of an athletic hybrid wide receiver, one of those guys that is like in between a tight end and a wide receiver. I thought he'd catch the ball. I thought he'd run after the catch. I thought he could be a significant piece in their passing attack, and I've been disappointed with him. I really have from the beginning, and then going back to this past Sunday, dropped a couple of balls. I mean, the ball that he drops on the last possession of the regulation on first down puts them in a position where even DK's leap at the sideline doesn't get them the first down. They have to settle for a field goal there and a tie and go to overtime. Now they win the game, but if they lose the game, a lot of us are talking about Fant coming across the middle wide open and the ball's right in his breadbasket and he drops it, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm a little concerned about production at the tight end position. To the offensive line, I think the offensive line analysis is very simple. And I can't give you DVOA. I can give you MUOA, Mitch Unfiltered OA. Okay, I can't give you DVO.
Love it.
To me, it's very simple. The offensive line is a disaster at this moment. Mm-hmm. If the offensive line plays over the next 15 games the way they've played over the first 2, the Seahawks aren't winning 8. They're probably not even winning 7. Now, that's a big if. I expect that the offensive line will get better for a lot of reasons, and you know most of them. I think the center will be better as he's further removed from the catastrophic knee surgery of a year ago. I think as the weeks go on, Connor Williams will get better. I think Cross has been outstanding already. Obviously, if they ever get Lucas back, it'll be better. I would think that Bradford would stop committing penalties.
Man.
And I would think that maybe Haynes can give them something as they go along, although he was not good, especially in pass protection on Sunday. I tend to think that Tomlinson at left guard is a shot fighter. He strikes me as just a veteran who the clock might be up on Tomlinson, and I wonder.
Dude, that guy is like cheating on every snap. Like he's almost false starting on every snap to give himself a chance, and he's still getting smoked.
Looks like a shot fighter to me. If you said to me, Jackson, in 10 weeks that Haynes will be starting at one guard and Bradford will be starting at the other guard, and Tomlinson might not even be on the team anymore, I don't think that would be far-fetched. It may not happen. So the question is the offensive line going to improve? How much is it going to improve? Are they going to get Lucas back? But I think as constituted right now, if they don't play better as a group, they're going nowhere. They're not winning 8. They're not winning 7. They're not overcoming the offensive line because they're not going to be playing Jacoby Brissett and Bo Nix every week. Right. They're going to start playing some teams that will take advantage of you on that. So I don't know what to think about the offensive line. I tell you, I am exhausted of talking about the offensive line. I am exhausted of talking about how John Schneider, for all of his great qualities, just does not invest in the offensive line. I don't know what the numbers are. Maybe you do. What kind of salary that they are, what kind of salaries they're paying the offensive line right now, where these guys are coming from. It's just maddening to have to talk about this every single year. And I wonder, are they still paying off? Are we still repaying the mortgage, the debt on Steve Hutchinson and Walter Jones? I mean, when does that, these mortgages that you pay, they last for 30 years. At what point are we paying
Yeah, but
off?
you should be able to refinance them at some point along the way.
Don't you think? God.
And they haven't been able to. Either that or they're getting some fucked up appraisals when they've tried.
I don't know.
And you bring up a good point. John Schneider has not invested either the draft capital or the money in free agency or to re-sign the few good offensive linemen that he's had to the type of money it takes to put together a good offensive line. Now, I believe there's only 5 or 6 good offensive lines in the NFL right now. There aren't 150 good offensive linemen on this planet by NFL standards. In fact, there's probably 40 or fewer. So your goal is to get like 3 of them. And if Connor Williams gets back to pre-knee injury, 90% pre-injury skill at center, great. Abe Lucas comes back, great. Now you've got 3, because right now Charles Cross is the highest graded tackle in football, according to PFF. He has not allowed a single pressure this season, and he's number 7 in run block win rate, which, again, subjective stat, but it's someone grading and saying you either won the snap or you lost the snap. Everybody else is losing all the time. And it just, if you're a defensive coordinator, and I won't harp on it because I'm tired of talking about it too, but if you're a defensive coordinator, there is no reason to try and confuse Charles Cross when you can beat everybody else straight up.
Right.
And until that changes, we're not going to see everything that Ryan Grubb wants to do on this offense. Now, he got creative. We talked about it Sunday night after the game on the Seahawks No Table on your show.
Yeah.
That on the DK, the cool thing about that DK Metcalf touchdown play is it looks like a blown coverage, and it was. But the reason that it was a blown coverage is because they used an old Bill Belichick trick of bringing their slot receiver, which in that case was Noah Fant, from the right across the formation as the ball was snapped. He is already moving full speed to pick up an intentionally left free rusher off the left side. He picks him up, chips him long enough. Well, the thing about that is that safety sees Noah Fant in motion. He's not thinking he's in motion to run block or to block on a pass play because nobody does that. So he comes up because he's saying Noah Fant is in motion to come out into the flat. That safety was supposed to be over the top of Christian Gonzalez. And before the ball is even thrown, Christian Gonzalez, who is passing DK Metcalf off to a safety that is no longer there, throws his hands in the air. That's the type of next level, I'm thinking 2 moves ahead, chess that Seattle's offensive coordinators have not had. So if we can get even decent offensive line play moving forward, we're going to start to see more and more of the cool shit. But right now, they really have to pick their spots with that. They can't do that every single play. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, and look, everyone listening to this show, everyone listening to your show knows that the biggest thing Seattle has to address is offensive line now. DK Metcalf just restructured his contract to free up $10 million to spend either this year or next year. Maybe that's for an extension for Geno or DK, but maybe it's to go out and find the best offensive lineman on a bad team, trade a 5th round pick like San Francisco did with Washington for Trent Williams and pay him what he needs to help shore this thing up. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. But you're right. I mean, that is the biggest thing. The thing that's encouraging to me more than anything else in that game was the emergence of Jackson Smith-Njigba as more than just a screen merchant, because that's not who he was in college at all. They've been using him through the first 17 games of his career. Last year, I think he missed 1 or 2 at the beginning of the season. And the first game this year as like a Rondale Moore, Tutu Atwell, just get him the ball and hope he shimmies his way for 6 yards. We finally got to see him win at the 2nd and 3rd level, 16 targets, 12 catches, over 100 yards. And I couldn't believe this stat. Sunday was the first time in Seahawks franchise history that 2 different receivers had both 10 yards and 10 catches and 100 yards in the same game. My question to you is, is Jackson Smith-Njigba surpassing Tyler Lockett as a focal point? Or do you think that it's just going to kind of vary week to week? Because we saw Lockett as the go-to guy in week 1.
I don't know that I even look at those 2 guys as who's the focal point more than the other. I think they're radically different players, especially at this stage of Lockett's career. I would say to you that there were 2 co-MVPs of the Patriots game in my mind. And I know that you agree with this because I saw your reaction when I said it to you on Mitch Unfiltered episode 303 on Monday. I said to you...
Available everywhere you get your podcast.
Well, almost everywhere. Yeah, sure. I said to you, Geno was the MVP, but a close second was Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator. I mean, they were paralyzed from a offensive line run blocking standpoint. You could not watch that Patriots game without arriving at the conclusion that they could not run the ball. Mm-hmm. And the pass protection was spotty. Mm-hmm. For Ryan Grubb to be able to dial enough up to be able to allow them to move the ball with efficiency. There was a lot of behind the line tosses out. There were a lot of quick hitters, wide receiver screens. There was even a running back screen on one of the most important plays of the game, the 3rd and 7 from wherever it was, the 45-yard line, the little screen to the left to Charbonnet that got him 9 yards or 8 yards in the first down. I thought Ryan Grubb, for what was being handed to him, the cards that he was left to play, I thought he really did as much with what he had to work with as possible. So I think he gets a lot of the credit for both those guys going over 10 catches and over 100 yards. I thought Smith-Njigba was great. Would have liked to have seen him come down with that 22 or 23-yarder. That would have been a first.
That was a bad drop. That was the first bad drop of his career.
Maybe of his career, correct. And I would just say about Tyler Lockett, week 1 he was awesome. Okay? And I think if you just pick up the newspaper, anybody pick up the newspaper anymore? If you just go to the web and you look at the box score at the end of the game against the Patriots without watching the game, you're going to see Lockett with what? 1 or 2 catches 15 yards, 16 yards. I don't even know what his numbers were at the end of the game. Here's what I do know, that there were 2 vital pass interference calls. He gets no credit for a catch or yards on those 2 plays. One was in the end zone in the first half, which I, by the way, thought both of them, I'll talk out of both sides of my mouth for a second. If I'm being honest, I thought both of them were a little shaky in the calls. Yep. Because if you look to see the one in the end zone in the first half where the ball landed, it landed 5 or 6 yards out of bounds on the right side of the end zone. He was not going to make that catch if nobody touched him, but they gave him the PI, which he gets credit for. And then on the last drive on the left sideline, he draws a PI that probably could have swallowed the flag, so to speak, but they didn't. They gave him the PI, and that was a huge play. So I would say that Lockett's contributions in the second game were better than the box score indicates. Let's put it that way.
I totally agree. Lockett is the king of the hidden yards. He has, I know a couple seasons ago, he led the NFL in pass interference yards, and he reminds me, to me, he's the Tony Parker of football. I don't know how big of a basketball fan you are.
Yes. Floppy? A little floppy flop? No.
A little bit, but also leaning into the fact he's not like, I look at a Tank Dell, and that's a small guy who is out there trying to play big and does actually play big. Devontae Smith plays big for a small guy. Tyler Lockett doesn't pretend to play big. When it's time to be the little guy that gets hit by the bigger corner or the safety, he does not mind getting his ass tossed across the field in order to get that flag. And it's not going to show up in the box score, but Tony Parker led the NBA in free throw attempts one year. Like, as a point guard, as a little guy, that's what Tyler Lockett can do. And those yards count the same as a catch when it comes to your win probability.
Let me give you.
I think that's a great point.
Let me double down on one other thing to keep in mind about Lockett. And I've said this on our show a lot over the last couple of 2, maybe 3 years. As he has gotten older, and I don't have the metrics, I don't have the numbers, I don't have the paper in front of me to prove what I'm saying. I just have my eyesight. And my eyesight tells me that he is catching, they are throwing him the ball. It feels like 85% or more outside the numbers. Everything they're doing with Lockett is on the sideline at this stage of his career. I don't know if that's intentional. I don't know if they're worried about him going over the middle at this point in his career. He's one hit away from being out. He's diminutive. He's older. He is not making catches over the middle. In fact, there was a play against the Cowboys last year. I don't know if you remember, where he dropped the ball. It may have been not against the Cowboys. Might have been against it was a big play down the middle of the field late in the game last year that he dropped the ball as he was about to get hit, and it was one of the few that they threw to him down the middle. I bring that up to say I think Jackson and Jigba and Lockett are important to one another because they are using Lockett so much on the sideline. I mean, how many times do you see a ball thrown to Lockett on the sideline where he catches it and then goes out of bounds? Or it's a deep ball where he tries to draw a PI, or he looks at the last minute back and he makes a catch on the sideline. I think in Jigba's ability to go over the middle of the field, for them to use the middle of the field within Jigba, I think complements where Tyler Lockett is right now in his career and their inclination as an offense to use him on the sideline. And then you got Metcalf, who they use in all facets, both over the middle and at the sideline. So I would say that Smith and Jigba and Lockett are yin and yang. They work off of each other very nicely because of the fact that they don't send Lockett over the middle. Very, very rarely do they send Lockett over the middle anymore.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because one thing that I think escapes the discourse a lot when we talk about football, when we talk about quarterback play, is the willingness and the ability to throw over the middle. And it's something that Russell Wilson never did. And when you look at pass charts of these quarterbacks across the league, very few passes are actually going over the middle. And you look at the quarterbacks who have the highest percentage of throws over the middle, they're often the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And Geno Smith is not only capable, but he is willing to throw the ball over the middle. He had one throw to Jackson Smith and Jigba. It was a 19-yard crossing pattern where, first of all, Zach Charbonnet, who is not Kenneth Walker, we are learning that every single week. But one thing that Zach Charbonnet is excellent at is diagnosing and picking up pass rush. And he bought Smith half a step to get up in the pocket, and he whipped the ball over a linebacker between the corner and the safety to Smith and Jigba on a third down for 19 yards that ended up leading to a much needed score in the third quarter. So it's one thing to have a receiver that is able to win over the middle. It's another thing to have a quarterback that is willing and capable to get it there. And folks listening to the show, we just set a record for the lowest percentage of time talking about Seahawks wide receivers where I talk about DK Metcalf, who is coming off one of the better games that we've seen from him. Now, I do want to...
Now, hold on. Before you get off of the topic of going over the middle. Okay?
All right.
And you just told me that more and more quarterbacks around the NFL, and I'll trust you on this. I'm just going to trust you on this. You just said that more and more over the years in the NFL, quarterbacks are reluctant to use the middle of the field.
Yep.
How sick and tired did you get in the last couple of years of the Pete Carroll era and the Pete Carroll defense of watching opponents like Matthew Stafford throw the ball over the middle in front of linebackers and having Bobby Wagner or whomever, Jordan Brooks, 5 yards behind a receiver or a tight end that's standing in the middle of the field, allowing them to catch the ball in front of them for 9 or 10 yards, and then they come up and make the tackle.
I don't think there is a single thing a quarterback can do to make them feel themselves and start swaggering around and strutting than delivering a ball between defenders over the middle. That is the man's game throw. And no defense I have ever watched on any team in my entire life has made it easier to make that throw than the Pete Carroll defenses of the last few years. And at some point, I will stop qualifying all of these statements with, I love Pete Carroll. Look, I love Pete Carroll. But you cannot watch the Seahawks, honestly, and say that they did not make it very easy for slot receivers and tight ends to eat them up over the middle. At least when Hunter Henry was doing it, most of his yards came on Jacoby Brissett escaping pressure and finding him on a bailout. So, yes, 100%. We have seen it so much from Seattle's defense, but they made it easier on quarterbacks than just about anybody else. So it is a good point. I'm glad you brought it up. But I think that says more about Seattle's defense.
The 2nd and 2s, Jackson.
Last goodness. Year,
come on. How many? The first down throws to the receiver at 8 yards over the middle, and the second. How many are you going to? I'm just going to throw myself out a window if I saw any more 2nd and 1s and 2nd and 2s because we just handed them 8 yards or 9 yards over the middle to a wide receiver.
There is no situation in football that opens up the playbook more than 2nd and short. You can do anything you want. 2nd and short is the football equivalent of a pitcher having an 0-2 count. You can throw anything you want, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. So, I hear you there. Now, we have talked a little bit about the Dolphins game already, so I'm just going to ask you this. What is the number one thing that you are looking for in this game on Sunday?
Well, I think you'd be remiss. I mean, it's easy to look by the fact that the Dolphins are starting a backup quarterback. And what can Mike Macdonald do against a backup quarterback? Now, Mike Macdonald faced Tua, I think, both the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, as the Ravens defensive coordinator. You can check me on that. I think the Dolphins came back early in the season 2 years ago from a big deficit and scored like 35 in the second half on Mike Macdonald to beat them in Baltimore in front of the home fans. I'm pretty sure about that. And then last year, they faced him again during the regular season, and they got a couple of things early the Dolphins offense did, but then Mike Macdonald won that battle last year. I'm doing that based on memory. So
they won 56-19 over the Dolphins last year.
Okay, so there you go. And I think maybe
Tua had 2 picks.
I think maybe they scored. The Dolphins did early in the game on one of the early drives, and then didn't do anything after that. But I might be mistaken. First of all, I would say, what is Macdonald going to do with Skylar Thompson? How is he going to play Skylar Thompson? And you mentioned Jerome Baker. don't underestimate the kind of impact that Jerome Baker is going to have in the classrooms, in the meeting sessions over the next couple of 2-3 days.
He's seen McDaniels a lot.
Yeah, nobody's more intimately aware of what Mike McDaniel likes to do than probably Jerome Baker. So Jerome Baker is going to help in that regard.
Almost certainly true.
Absolutely. So, I think Achane is the key. I think the running back is the key. I don't know if Mostert's going to play. I'm assuming Achane is going to play. I think he's the key to everything the Dolphins do without Tua. And he's been really, really good, sneaky good his first year in 2 games in the league when he's healthy. Sneaky good.
You're not going to find a bigger Devon Achane fan outside of Miami than this guy that you're talking to right now.
Both in the passing game, and in the passing game and in the running game. He's really good. He's really good. And so I'm waiting to see whether you can bring Rayshon Jenkins up. Can you trust Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen with the too fast Waddle and Tyreek Hill? Can you trust them with those 2 guys with a little bit of safety help from Julian Love and bring Jenkins up to help in the run game with Achane or not?
That's the scary thing, because no matter who's quarterback, you got Tyreek Hill threatening right over the top of you. And look, here's one thing that I want to say about Devon Achane, and this is not just me being a huge fan of this guy, which I am. It is from Seahawks fans. When you're watching the game on Sunday, here's one thing to look for. The average yards per attempt when targeting a running back is just over 4. Devon Achane in his career is at 9.5. This year, he has caught all 14 of his targets for 145 yards, almost 10.5 yards per target this year as a running back. He is such an X factor. I came in thinking that, his ceiling, his 1% outcome is that he has a Chris Johnson career season in his career, 1 Jamal Charles season in his career. This dude might be Marshall Faulk. And I understand what I'm saying when I say that. But in terms of Devon Achane would probably be a top 10 slot receiver in the NFL right now. And he's also a running back that's averaged over 6 yards a carry in his career so far. So he is, to your point, he's
the key in the game on that side of the ball.
He's the queen on the chessboard.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He can do anything at any point. And again, they give him a freaking running start every time, know? I mean, the brilliance is in the simplicity of that.
Well, but the question for the Dolphins is going to be how much of his value, how much of his danger is when Tua's in there and they've got the real bona fide threat of Tua going down the field to Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Mm-hmm. And with Skylar Thompson in there, does it free Mike McDonald and the Seahawks defense up to do some things with number 28 of the Dolphins and bottle him up a little bit easier? We'll wait and see. I think if that's not the biggest key, it's the biggest key of the Dolphins offense versus the Seahawks defense. If you flip it around, I think that the defense for the Dolphins has been, you'll tell me statistically DVOA what they've been, but I've watched both games that they've played, and I would say it's been okay.
Yep.
It's been okay. I don't see a lot of pressure. I think the Seahawks should be able to pass protect. I think Geno's going to have time. You're going to get the Jalen Ramsey versus DK Metcalf matchup again, which we all love to see.
Yeah.
I would expect that the Seahawks offense, if they can just get a little bit more from their offensive line, I would expect that the Seahawks offense would be able to move the ball against the Dolphins defense. So I'm expecting the Seahawks to win the game on Sunday.
You got a score prediction? Well, I'm gonna borrow from the Mitch Unfiltered Seahawks note table. Closest to the pin. What do you got?
I don't know that I have one yet. It's only Tuesday. Do I have to give you one now? I mean, I haven't really I take these things very, very serious. I don't just grab.
Oh man, you can wuss out here. You don't.
Oh boy.
I mean,
see
you can
that?
just.
Now you're questioning my man.
You can just you can hide behind it's Tuesday
here
if you
I
want.
went. I said to my wife, this is an aside. I said to my wife, I don't know if you can see what I've got in my head.
Yeah.
I said to my wife, I'm going on a podcast called Cigar Thoughts. And the guy is super cool. He's the coolest guy in the Northwest that talks about the Seahawks. He's a little bit of a Pollyanna guy when it comes to the offensive line and the run defense, but he's a super cool guy, and he smokes cigars. And I said to my wife, "What am I going to do? I don't smoke cigars." And so she went out. My wife went out. I'm bringing this over to the.
Oh,
she went out and got me some chocolate cigars. They're called cigars. From, if you can read it, SEEG.
No, I'm familiar.
They're cigars. Yeah. So while you've been smoking your cigar, I've been chewing on mine. Yep. And so that's I have that to say. I think the Seahawks will win. I don't know. I don't want to give you my score yet because Mitch Unfiltered, the Thursday show, the closest to the win.
Margin of victory. What's the margin of victory?
All right, I'll do margin of victory.
Okay.
I'll say Seahawks by 10.
Woo!
Seahawks by 10 on Sunday afternoon against Skylar Thompson.
So you're telling me
I'm telling
that you who came in and made your Cigar Thoughts debut telling me I was full of shit because I am too high on this team are going to predict them to beat the Miami Dolphins by a touchdown more than they beat the New England Patriots and Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you that they're going to beat Skylar Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? After they beat Jacoby Brissett and Bo Nix. Yes. I'm going to tell you that they're going to beat them at home in front of the 12s in what should be a pretty emotional setting. And I also happen to think, see, what you don't realize about me, what you don't know about me, do you know where I grew up? Cigar Thoughts while you're smoking?
You grew up down in Florida, man. Come on.
All right.
I know. Come on now.
Okay, so, all right. So no one watches the Dolphins more than me in this town. I mean, I grew up with Dan Marino and Bob Greasy and Earl Morrow. I mean, I love the Dolphins like I love you, which is a lot. I mean, I love the Dolphins. But come on. They're facing I have a sense with everything that's gone on down there, they lost to the rival Bills. They lost some guys to injury. They've got the Tua concussion thing going now. That gray cloud has been hanging over them. A lot of distractions.
Man.
Now you get on the plane and you go 3,000 miles to a tough environment where they're feeling good about themselves at 2-0. I'm one who believes in that shit. I believe in the feel of a game.
I do
These
too.
guys are human beings. I don't think the Dolphins are in a very good place. I think the Seahawks get the Dolphins in the perfect situation.
I agree.
Situation. So that's why I'm picking the Seahawks.
Coming off a brutal loss where they look bad even before Tua got hurt. And the one benefit that they have is that they played a Thursday game. They got a couple extra days to get ready, get healthy, get prepared, all that stuff. I get that. But yeah, I mean, of course, this is a softer landing for the Seahawks than what we thought when the schedule came out. When we looked and we said, okay, it's the Dolphins week 3. I really hope they're 2-0 going into that game because you could see, based on what we've known, what's been hammered into us about the Seahawks defense for the last half decade, you could see a 50-point output. I think the Dolphins are going to get there. I got 27-23 Seahawks. I do think they win this game. And again, it is not a matter of me being Pollyanna on the Seahawks, but until I am given a reason to think that this team is not good enough to beat a bad quarterback, I'm going to assume they're going to beat bad quarterbacks. I like your prediction better. I would love a comfortable victory. That's not really the Seahawks way, but I'll take it if we can get it. All right. Go ahead. All right, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say must win because they're 2-0 and they're doing fine, but hey, they've held serve against Bo Nix. They've held serve against Jacoby Brissett. They really need to hold serve against Skylar Thompson because unless some other unforeseen injuries are coming, as well as I do, the Jared Goffs and the Matthew Staffords and the Brock the real quarterbacks.
They're coming.
They're coming.
And the real OCs, honestly.
All right, so put some of these wins in the bank. You need to put these wins in the bank, right? Because the real quarterbacks are coming down the pike, right?
Oh, no question about that. And look, man, that since you brought it up, let's talk about this NFC West. Now, look, it's 2 games in. I'll front run when I can because you don't get that many opportunities as a Seattle sports fan to front run. But a lot of that is just me having some fun. My goal is to be an accurate Seahawks fan, an accurate analyst of this team. And the Seahawks are the only 2-0 team in this division. They are in first place. A lot of that has to do with the fact that the 2 teams that coming into the season looked like the biggest threat to beating Seattle and edging them out of a playoff spot have been decimated by injuries so far. You've got the San Francisco 49ers without Christian McCaffrey. They're going to be without Deebo Samuel for a couple of weeks. They're without Hufanga. They're without Dre Greenlaw. They are hurting right now, and they just lost to Sam Darnold. You've got the Rams, who are without 4/5 of their offensive line. They don't have Cooper Kupp. They don't have Puka Nacua. Some of these players will be back when they play Seattle, but they're not going to be back when these teams play next week. And most of the guys I just mentioned aren't going to be back when they play the game after that, and the game after that, and the game after that. Mm-hmm. Seattle has a pretty beautiful opportunity to be mostly healthy against beatable quarterbacks to extend a lead in the division. That being said, how do you handicap this division? If you had to predict right now what the records of the 4 teams in this division are after 17 games, knowing what we know about the injuries that have already happened and trying as best as you can to predict all of the uncertainty of the future season with injuries and development and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Give me your predicted win totals for each of these 4 teams.
I would say it would still be 8 or 9 for the Seahawks. Mm-hmm. Until I see them play a quality offensive team, until I see them play a better game on the offensive line, I think it's still way too early to try to stretch to 10 games at this point. When I see that, I'll change my mind. I'll reserve the right to change my mind. And I think those other teams, while the playing field has been leveled a little bit because of those injuries, I still view the Rams and the 49ers as better football teams than the Seahawks. So I would still say I would expect at least one or both of those teams to finish, even as we sit here today, ahead of the Seahawks in the NFC West. But
how do you square that with the Cardinals beating the Rams by 31 points on Sunday?
Well, I think that the Rams, I think they're going to get some of these guys back. I think the Rams went into a tough spot.
Not till November.
Okay, but I still think, I think Arizona's improved, number one. Number two, it was the home opener. I think there's something about home openers always that you have to take into consideration. There's an emotion about home openers. They had played, by the way, very well. The Cardinals had played very well in Orchard Park, New York, against the Bills. They were right in that game against the Bills on opening day, right to the end. They've made a lot of additions. So I think the Cardinals are improved, and I think they got the Rams kind of like the Seahawks are getting the Dolphins. They got the Rams at the right time, right place, right time, and sometimes that just lines up. That intersection is perfect for exactly what happened between the Cardinals and the Rams. But I see your point. I know you want me to tell you the Seahawks are going to have a better record at the end of the year than both the 49ers.
I don't want that. I want Mitch unfiltered.
I'm giving you unfiltered. I haven't seen enough. I haven't seen enough yet to change my opinion that either one or both of those teams will finish with a better record than the Seahawks. That's my answer. That's my unfiltered answer.
I appreciate it, man. That's the one thing that we knew we could count on from you is the honesty. I predicted the Seahawks would be the second best team in this division before the season. I feel better about that. I think their chances of winning the division have gone up, but they're still way below 50%. The 49ers are just too good. They're too well coached. They have the best roster in the NFL when fully healthy. And they have the unique distinction of being a team that is good enough to take their time with their best players. They don't need to rush their best players back because they have a ton of other talent and they also have exceptional coaching. 2 years ago, we saw the Rams get decimated by injuries and they folded. It is really, really difficult to overcome an 0-2 start. It is much more difficult to overcome an 0-2 start when your two best playmakers are off the field for at least a month.
I agree.
Which they are.
I agree.
I think at this point, the Rams are going to be too far behind the 8 ball by the time Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp come back to make up 2 games on the Seahawks. Even though I think Sean McVay is one of the 4 or 5 best coaches in the NFL, even though I think Matthew Stafford, forget fucking fantasy and all that stuff, I'm talking true quarterback. If you could draft quarterbacks for one season right now, I've got Stafford probably like 6. I think he's that good. Like I said, I think the coaching is excellent, but they're already 2 games behind Seattle, and they're not going to have the guys that can actually do the things that Sean McVay's offense is predicated on to make up that ground. I feel very good about Seattle, second in this division. I predicted 10 wins before the season. That 10 wins was assuming that they would beat the Broncos and the Patriots. So I don't have any reason to come off of that so far. But the 49ers, they're still the Death Star, man. And like, look, last year they had an injury to Trent Williams and they went 1-2 and only scored 17 points in each of those games. Like, it happens. You lose good players. Teams are having to adjust in real time. I say this all the time on my show. The difference between good teams in the NFL and bad teams in the NFL isn't nearly as big as we as fans think, because everyone in the NFL is really fucking good at playing football. 49ers have more guys who are really fucking good at playing football than any other team in the NFL. This is still their division until I have tangible proof to the contrary. Seattle's road to the playoffs got a lot easier over the first 2 weeks than we anticipated.
Still have to play better. Still have to play better, especially on the offensive line.
Absolutely.
I can't keep saying the same thing. And I said it during the offseason. And as we got closer and closer to the season, people on the golf course would say, "Hey, Mitch, what do you think of the Seahawks? How do you?" My answer is the same thing now as it was before the season started. You tell me how the offensive line is going to play, and I'll tell you what kind of season the Seahawks are going to have. And if the offensive line, I'll just repeat what I said earlier on this show. If the offensive line of the Seahawks is going to play the way they've played, or it has played over the last 2 games for the rest of the season, the Seahawks are, I don't care how decimated.
It can fold quickly.
It's not happening. It's just,
it can fold quickly.
They've got to play better. They got to play better.
You know, I said before the season, the most important player on the Seahawks team is Geno Smith, and the second most important player is Abe Lucas. They got to get that boy back.
Got to play better.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last question before you go, and only because you mentioned it. Your next golf round, you get exactly 10. You got to bet $10,000, but you win $100,000 if you get it right. But when you tee off on the first tee, you don't remember your prediction, so you can't.
Oh, I can't
adjust the round.
I can't manipulate it.
Yep.
Okay.
What are you shooting?
Are you telling me what course I'm playing? Am I playing, Pebble Beach? Am I playing Augusta? Am I playing Carnation?
Whatever your home course is.
I'd say 79.
Oh my God, we got a real golfer in the house. Come on now.
79 is a real golfer? I'd say 78, 79.
Oh my God. All right.
Is that good?
Love that,
okay.
Yeah. Oh, come on. Is that good? That's like in the top 10% of golfers. Give me a break. All right. We got to get this guy out of here. He's pissing me off with his 79. All right. Look, that's going to do it for today on Cigar Thoughts. Mitch, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, man, this has been so much fun. Look, before we let you go, where can the listeners and the viewers find more of you?
Mitch Unfiltered. That's all you need to know on all major podcast platforms. Look us up. Check us out. You'll hear Jackson Bevins with his cigar in tow every Monday as we work our way with the Seahawks note table through the Seahawks season. Mitch Unfiltered. Very easy to find.
As always, You can find Mike and I on social media. I am on Twitter at Jackson Bevins. That's JACSON. Remember that no K is okay when spelling my name. Mike is on Twitter at Mike Barwin, and the show itself is at Cigar Thoughts. You can catch full video episodes on our YouTube channel at Cigar Thoughts and find the rest of our socials at cigarthoughtsnfl.com. As mentioned previously, this episode is brought to you by Glenfiddich Premium Single Malt Scotch Whiskey. Y'all know I'm a huge fan of their lineup, and we are thrilled to have them on board as a sponsor of the show. If you're watching on YouTube, you've seen me enjoying a glass of their French Oak 16, which has a bite of vanilla that I really like, and one of the great things about a great Scotch is how well it plays with a good cigar. Once again, we do have our own special release of cigars that you can purchase at a terrific price as a listener of the show. The release of these Cigar Thoughts Stogies has been successful enough for us to continue offering them for the low price of $149. That's right, only $149 for a bundle of 10. Again, these cigars, when banded and branded by the manufacturer, sell for $35 to $40 a stick. You're getting them for less than half of MSRP. As many of you know, we partnered with one of the most prestigious cigar manufacturers in the world to release these official Cigar Thoughts cigars, which you can order directly from cigarthoughtsnfl.com. Just follow the link on the show page to get these easy-to-smoke stogies rolled with 13-year aged premium Dominican tobacco leaf, or you can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram like many of you have, and we'll send you the details directly. The cigars come with a Boveda humidification pack and a Mylar storage bag to make sure they stay fresh whether you have a humidor or not. Of course, you can listen to this show and read every article at fieldgoals.com. And look, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and you like the show, drop us a 5-star rating, leave a quick review. We're almost at 200 ratings on Apple Podcasts. We're almost at 300 on Spotify. Can't tell you how much those mean to Mike and I, because otherwise we're just shouting into the void. So the feedback is crucial. We appreciate it. Thank you to all of y'all listening for your continued support of the show. We know that you've only got so much time for podcasts in your life, and it's an honor to be a part of that for y'all. Please know that by sharing this show on social media and with your friends, you give us the juice to keep making this happen. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, onwards and upwards, my friends.